Yes, thanks. She's much better again and in good spirits.
You said there was a trip with the cops. I thought like you were about to get arrested. I can't bail you
No,
out. I'm not over there.
that would be something different for a change.
Okay, then let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for carving some time out of your day for this. This is the first annual general meeting, or AGM, of the Software Underground. The quorum for this meeting is 10% of the members, the voting membership, which as of about 15 minutes ago was 126. So as long as we've got 13 people, we can proceed with the meeting. And I can't count those squares, but there's more than 13. So so we're officially allowed to have the AGM. Welcome and thanks for coming. As I just mentioned, I am streaming this to an unlisted YouTube video for our kind of records, if you like, for posterity. So it will be available for you to watch, but it won't be listed like on our channels and things. We could list it, I guess, later if we feel like that's a thing that people might want to stumble upon. I don't really have an opinion on it right now, but at least we'll have the option. It also spares me from having to frantically take minutes on every single item. I think now, okay, so you know, this is an AGM. It's an official thing that we have to do for the non-profit organization. We have to have an AGM with the members. All the members are invited to and are entitled to vote at every year. So it's one of the kind of few things that Software Underground has to do that's, you know, conventional, let's say. So I've got a bunch of slides that I mainly just sort of had in mind as essentially a record, a sort of document of record. But I thought it'd be more interesting at least to put them in slides than to have them in like a Google Doc type document. So sorry to PowerPoint you kind of thing, but you know, this stuff all needs to be written down. So with that, let me share this, and you are going to be able to pull it up on your own screen as well. How shall I do this? Because you won't. I think I'm going to do it will I keep it in here? Can I like display? Well, I'm just going to keep it like this, and then you can see hopefully everything that way. Yeah. Including like what's coming up and so on. Anyway, so here we are at the beginning. Just getting started now. At the beginning, sorry, at the bottom there's a link that goes to these slides. So if you'd rather watch these kind of on your desktop or download them or do whatever you like, then please go to that URL down there, AGM-2021. That link is also at the bottom of all the other slides in case you didn't have time to get to it, or you just want to know it later on. It's down there in pink. So I thought, since this is the first one we've done, I'd do a little bit of kind of retrospective, going further back in time than we will at future AGMs, because I know there's a lot of people around the organization now who are new to Swung, Software Underground. And so I thought I'd catch everyone up so you know kind of where did this society come from, like how did we get here? So I'll try to be brief, and as you know I sometimes struggle with that, but I'll try to be brief. And then I want to look back at the last year, you know, as a sort of formal review of like the major milestones that have happened since we incorporated. We'll look at the finances, which again is a thing that we have to do in the AGM because you're entitled to know and have access to that information. I want to just highlight some of the current activities, and that's as a way of setting the stage for the elections that are going to follow. So there's going to be some votes for all registered members. So if you joined officially Software Underground before about 15 minutes ago, then you're registered to vote. We have to adopt a piece of sort of legislation, the bylaw that controls how we run as an organization. And then we need to talk about the board and ask the members to approve the board. And then at the end, we can discuss anything else that's remaining. But I don't have and haven't received any other business, so we can do that spontaneously. I will go quiet for a bit in case anyone would like to say anything. And I'll just mention, many of the board members are here. Anyone on the board, and in fact, any of you, this is your meeting, are entitled to, speak up, interrupt at any point. I will go quiet now and again, and I'll also try to watch the swung-org channel in Slack. Okay. I know that the silences are awkward. At least I find them awkward. All right. So Software Underground, whence came Swung? Well, we started off after some of the early hackathons that we in Agile ran as a way to sort of continue the conversation, basically, between the events that we were doing in the community and at conferences and so on. So we started a Google group in July 2014. Aaron Close posted the first message. I noticed when I went in there earlier on. It's still there on the internet for posterity. You can go and read those early emails about open software and geophysics if you want. We realized pretty soon that Slack was much cooler than email, so we moved to Slack in August 2015, and I guess it basically puttered along for several years as a chat room, which was great. Absolutely served its purpose. We continued running events, we met new people, we grew in size, and it was absolutely fulfilling its purpose for that time. Then in 2019, Agile / Software Underground kind of, so Agile is my company, and I guess all of this was coming out of Agile really at the start in terms of like paying for things, paying for Slack, for example, being the funnel for funds for events and so on. And that reached a kind of crescendo at Transform 2019, which happened in a beautiful chateau in France, in Normandy. And it was a weird meeting in lots of ways. Exactly 28 people came to that meeting. So it was very small. It was an open meeting, but it turned out to be rather, have a rather cloistered feel to it for various reasons. Anyway, there were lots of conversations about governance, leadership, what can Swung do? Like, what can we become? Can we become this kind of global platform for our members that's easier to sponsor, that doesn't have this weird Siamese twin kind of relationship with Agile, that's focused on on the community and is operating out of a sort of spirit of goodwill and generosity, and it isn't connected, like I say, to a corporation, which I think just felt a bit weird for people to be like donating personal money to a corporation. It seemed strange to me. And the other thing was that the power structures were not obvious at all. And I read something around that time that said, I was like, oh, well, there is no power structure. And this thing basically said, well, if you're in an organization and you think there's no power structure, then, well, you're wrong. And the problem is that it's invisible, or it's because there's always a power structure, and what you've done is made it obscure and opaque. And so I was like, okay, well, we've got to change that. Let's open it up, make it clear how decisions are made, invite more people into that. And that's where we ended up. So I've linked to some blog posts there that sort of describe that transition, if you like. Anyway, so we incorporated on the 29th of April last year, and we've been going strong ever since, basically having board meetings and tweaking a few things on the website. But actually, a lot of things didn't really change, and we've tried to keep all the awesome things and not turn into a weird, over-organized, committee-run traditional society. Basically, that's what we're kind of terrified of becoming. So we need to keep reinventing ourselves. This past year, then, thanks for sharing stuff, by the way, in the Slack. That's great. So swung-org, just as a reminder, is the organizational channel for Software Underground. So what's happened in the last year? Well, we incorporated at, like I say, the age of almost 7 years, depending on exactly when you consider Software Underground to have been born. We immediately, obviously, that was right at the beginning of this COVID nightmare. So we were immediately faced with having to reorganize the hackathons that we'd arranged for last June into a virtual event. So that's where the Transform 2020 came from. I think we put material in front of and had conversations with about 700 people in the community during that event. It was awesome. Shortly after that, we added 2 new members to the what's called the founding board of an organization. Before the first AGM, you have this kind of temporary board. So Louisa Zuluaga in Norway and Lieka Welcome in Colorado came onto the board. Steve Purvis started the subsurface rendezvous meetups in November, and then kind of really got them going as a sort of prototype, I guess, and then really got them going in January. So those have been happening. I think there have been 6 now, at least, or 7 even if you include last Wednesday. And then just recently we brought on board another member to the this initial board that we have in Olawale Ibrahim, who gave a tutorial yesterday about how he won the Force machine learning contest earlier this year. So if you haven't seen that, you should go and check it out, because it's really cool to hear, especially an undergraduate geophysicist describing their superpowers, basically, spilling the beans and sharing their skills with everyone. It's awesome. I can't think of a more kind of archetypal piece of content, really, for our society. And then, we're obviously in the middle of Transform 2021 right now. Yes. Now, with that, this was the picture from last Transform. And I think, a lot of pennies dropped at Transform 2019 in France, although, as I say, it was an unusual kind of meeting and very small. Last year, a new bunch of pennies dropped, partly, as a result of the pandemic. This realization that, wow, we're actually all over the world, and we need to make our meetings more inclusive, basically, more geographically distributed, more distributed in time zones, and with clearer representation from minorities and from people in the community that we don't get to hear from as often. So, in a way, this single picture here was sort of behind a lot of the decisions that we were making about Transform 2021. And I think a lot of the decisions about things that we pay attention to and talk about in the board for Software Underground's other activities. It's like, basically, can a scientific society be this kind of truly global, truly accessible, right, in terms of cost, in terms of time zone, and so on, and sort of truly representative of the community in ways that I think traditional societies have not been able to do, because they have an annual meeting that you have to fly to in Houston or The Hague or whatever. So I'm super excited about that, because I think I don't see anyone else attacking that issue in the way that we can, because we're new and we're online first, right? We're only online essentially at the moment. Now, I thought, since Slack is kind of this beating heart of the Software Underground, Slack is obviously where the daily action is, and notwithstanding that there've been debates, and I hope there are ongoing debates, and I think every now and again, maybe annually or whatever, we should review, like, is Slack still the right tool? The same way that we moved from Google Groups 6 years ago. Certainly there are other tools out there that have different features from Slack. The last time we had the conversation, we elected to stay with it. It was very expensive at first until we incorporated and got access to the non-profit pricing, which is an 85% discount. So our Slack bill went from $2,500 a month last June during Transform to about $250 a month. And right now, I mean, I feel like that's fantastic value. Quite honestly, when you factor in the cost of having to run a server and so on, in terms of people's time. So anyway, let's top down here. I've got some numbers about Slack membership. So this is not the same thing as yeah, Jesse, that's right. This is not the same thing as Big M membership in the Software Underground, which I'll talk about in a bit. So this is our Slack guests, if you like. Because our Slack is as open as we can make it. Anyone is welcome to join it. On the 1st of Jan 2019, it had 1,177 members. The beginning of last year, which is chiefly what I'm talking about here, we had 1,900 people in Slack. And at the end of the year, we had almost 3,000. So we grew substantially last year. I know that I feel like that top graphic I've made is a bit confusing. It's basically a timeline with member numbers marked on it. So it's linear in time. It is a time member transform. And so where we are right now on the right-hand edge of that little plot, and it's not, I'm ashamed to say, a matplotlib plot. I only thought of making it last night and I didn't have time to bugger around with matplotlib. But where we are now is almost 3,500. Now, thank goodness, from Slack's point of view, because members cost $8 a month, or used to, sorry, they cost, I guess, $1.25 or something now. You don't pay for all the members in Slack, you only pay for the active ones. Currently, there are 300 weekly active members, or sorry, there were through 2020, of whom 94, so roughly 100, roughly a third, actually post something as part of their activities. So Slack counts people who are reading and responding to posts. So, it's like, what is that? Roughly 10% of the membership are active on a weekly basis. And of those, roughly a third are actually posting things. Last year, mind-blowingly, 115,000 messages were posted. Like that's a lot of messages. In a free Slack, you can only see the last 10,000 messages. So that perhaps helps you understand why we had to move from a free Slack in the first place. Once we had, I think, about 80,000 messages, if I remember rightly, it was getting too frustrating because you'd search for things and they'd gone over the event horizon. So, we're now, I mean, we're easily posting, we're basically posting that many a month. I think the main thing that I find mind-blowing about Software Underground Slack is that fully 70% of the messages are private. Like that, it is mostly DMs in our community. Which when I first saw that, I was like, "What?" that kind of blew my mind, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." I don't know why I felt like it was weird. But actually, I think it's kind of amazing and wonderful that we've got a place here where people can talk to each other directly and candidly, and that is the community. But yeah, it blows my mind that we only really get to see about not even a third of it. And yeah, so the median number of daily messages, 245. We were over 3,000 messages a day at one point during Transform last year. Transform last year was really weird. I think people, looking back, my read is that people were desperate for some contact. And so it was a sort of right place, right time thing. Because this year's numbers around Transform in terms of messages and so on has not been as mental as last year was. Anyway, that's Slack. I'll just pause in case there are questions. By the way, I'm not looking at all at my Jitsi screen, so pleasingly, there are still plenty of people here, and it's not just me and Steve, Dieter. But no one has their hand up as far as I can see.
Your voice is all we need, Matt. It's always been good enough.
Oh, don't make me cry.
We're here. We're here. I'm lurking as usual. Thanks, Chance.
Okay.
Wow, this is good. I mean, encouraging
ahead.
Numbers. Yeah. I'm just going to say, you know, it's been a crazy ride this year, and yeah, I think people are a little bit more used to the format of a virtual event, but the participation's been good, and man, the content this year is just outstanding. I mean, one of the great things that Transform does is it puts this stuff out there for free and for everyone, and it, you know, I'm referring people back to Transform tutorials all the time when they want to learn, you know, various aspects of the stack. And I think that the library we're creating is, you know, really a great resource for, you know, for everyone, not just Swung. I mean, it's, you know, something we should all be proud of. And so, you know, I'm glad to be a part of all this.
Yeah.
So,
amen. Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the Slack that, you know, I think that the channel's had something like 2,000 views a day for the last couple of days. So, I mean, yeah, there are absolutely thousands of people appreciating the content that the instructors have been bringing this week. It's awesome. All right. So one thing that we've tried to be a little bit better at in the recent past is social media. So I just wanted to mention that we are now on LinkedIn. Steve Purvis is the main, I don't know what you call it.
Hoster,
yeah.
Poster, yeah.
Poster on there. So please, you know, do at Software Underground if you're writing about it in your posts, and, you know, maybe look out for Software Underground's posts and reshare those or like them or whatever to help the algorithm put them in front of other people. And same story on Twitter. If you're more of a Twitter person, we're at swung_org. We did get banned briefly this year or last year, I should say, because I changed our birthday to our actual Software Underground's birthday, and Twitter immediately shut us down because we were a small child, and took absolutely weeks to get unlocked. But anyway, back on track. Luisa Lieka and myself are the main correspondents there. Also, Evan has been blogging quite a bit recently, doing sort of summary posts each week. And, you know, those, I mean, we talked, I don't know if I can do this. Can I? Yes, maybe. We talked on and off about doing these in the past. So this is a bit experimental. They are, you know, a decent amount of work for Evan. I mean, not a huge amount, but he's doing them weekly currently. Any feedback, you know, you don't have to give me the feedback now, but if you have feedback for Evan, I guess, or for Software Underground, doing stuff like that, or if you'd like to contribute to things like that, please, by all means, reach out in the Swung.org channel. I guess one of the things about Slack is that it isn't publicly searchable, so it doesn't show up in Google. You can't share a link to someone who's not a Slack user. You know, they have to sign up in order to come in and see a link to a Slack post. And that is a bit of a limitation. It's probably the number one reason why I would support changing to another platform. So these posts were a way to explore, getting a bit of Google juice basically for the website, because Google really likes it when you have updating content, and having links that people can share to things so that people can see outside of Slack. Oh, that's the kind of stuff they talk about. That sounds cool. I'd like to be part of that. So anyway, that's the goal there. It's outreach, I suppose.
I was just going to mention one thing, because on the social media front as well, we put those things, those accounts are sort of up there, and they sort of promote Software Underground, but they also, like I said, they provide a handle for you to be able to sort of mention and tag Software Underground, and that's one thing that we're keen to do, is be able to use the accounts to amplify or help amplify the other projects that people are involved in. So feel free to tag us in order that we know about you and can then, follow you and retweet and share and help amplify what people in the community is doing. I think that's one objective that we want to get better at with these accounts over time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. No, that's really, really fundamental, actually. That, we really want to be a force for the community, right? To promote the things that the community is interested in, whether it involves Software Underground or not. So, absolutely want to support other communities out there, especially grassroots communities like Hair Latinas. And if you're doing something out in the community, that you'd like to promote, like, just please help us help you promote it and give it airtime, and even help you find sponsors and so on. Like, that's what we're there for. We're not there to, organizations like SEG and EAGE and so on are professional event organizers, basically. Like, they run events with staff for their communities, and so they're naturally focused towards their own things, and it's massively expensive to run things like that. So they have to pay a lot more attention to their sponsors and attracting, substantial amounts of support from the industry and so on. We're free from those needs, basically, because we're volunteer run, we're community focused, we're a grassroots organization. That's absolutely our goal, is to support you and what you're doing. So help us and be part of helping the community, get into the stuff that you're into. Basically, that's what we're here for.
Matt, I'm just going to cut in really quickly, one second. And just a heads up, if you do have something you want us to broadcast and you don't have one of these social medias, feel free to put it in the Slack channel, because sometimes I peruse to see if anyone's made any announcements that we could kind of transfer over to Twitter or share that information about also. So don't feel inhibited by not having a Twitter account or so forth.
Yeah, right. Really great point, Lieka. Thank you. All right, so carrying on, that might have been the last kind of warm and fuzzy slide. There's a bit business-like from here. We'll try to keep it not too dry. Now, the financial reports, such as they are, do make it onto the Software Underground GitHub. So github.com/softwareunderground. And then there is a swung-org repo there that holds things like the board minutes from each month's meeting and the financial reports. Now, yesterday I added a sort of human-readable summary of the year document to the financials, just to make it a little bit easier to digest, maybe, or follow what's happening and why perhaps they look a bit weird. The bottom line really is that this was, or 2020 I'm talking about here, and the financial year goes up to the 31st of December 2020. So as I mentioned, Agile was the bank account. It was the bankroll for Software Underground before April, and actually it continued because it took a while after we'd incorporated to get a bank account, and then it took even longer to get a credit card, which of course you need to actually start paying for stuff like Slack. So as a result, in fact, we didn't get the credit card until November, the second half of November. So as a result, Agile's finances and Software Underground's finances were kind of inextricably, well, not completely inextricably, but somewhat overlapping, let's say, for 2020. The goal was to dissociate them by the end of the year, which we've done. So Software Underground is now, since January, hands-free from Agile's point of view. The finances from last year were not like that. And because, I have limited time and attention to pay to the books, and we didn't want to start paying for a bookkeeper yet, so we're kind of borrowing Agile's bookkeeper, who's an independent here in the town where I live. Anyway, we tried to keep things as simple as possible by basically looking at the net of where things stood after Transform 2020 and at the end of the year, and then basically Agile just writing a check to Software Underground to say, okay, well, that's the balance of where we're at. Rather than trying to, for instance, say, oh yeah, Software Underground's been paying for Slack all this time, but actually it was coming out of Agile's thing. So Agile now has to make a donation that matches all of those payments. We didn't do that. We just said at the end of the year, Agile's donated that money. That's gone. That's in the past. That's why in front of you here, you'll see that there are no operating expenses. Essentially, the only ones that are there are things from the banking. So Slack was actually an expense, but Agile was paying it. But we didn't count that as a donation, so there's no need for it to flow through Software Underground, if you see what I'm saying. So the main items under income were that corporate contribution at the top. That came from Dell Technologies. That is still available. It's $5,000 US. The numbers in front of you are all Canadian dollars. That $5,000 US is still available for supporting the computational field camp, which I'll mention again in a second, but basically hasn't happened yet. The individual contributions, those are donations from members last year. And then the program income, that is one of these net payments that Agile made to Software Underground it was basically the profit from Transform 2020. So that was the kind of net out of the Transform 2020 program. Again, at the time that happened, Agile paid all the bills and Agile took the corporate contributions, which we actually got in 2019. So this is a kind of reconciliation, you could say, happening after that event. Anyway, so the bottom line for last year was lots of income, chiefly, like I say, that one big donation, Transform 2020, and the donations from members. And very, very little in the way of expenses because of how we accounted for those with Agile. So kind of the too long didn't read of all that is that we're all squared away at the end of the year. We've just done the tax return for the government. We're incorporated here in Canada. So we've done the tax return for the government here. The next order of business with the government is to do our annual report, our annual filing for the non-profit, which is basically just to say, here's our financials, here are our directors now, and we're still here, we still exist. So that's going to be what I do next week, basically, after this meeting. Yeah. FYI, we're doing the accounts in an app called Wave. It's an online accounting platform. It's Canadian as well. It's really awesome. It's free, and I'm really happy with it. So it is. If you're very interested in finances, I would say it would be great to have a kind of financial task force, if you like, in the Software Underground. Because personally, I don't enjoy that role, although I am nominally the treasurer right now. So I'd love to form a sort of task force. It would be very easy to grant access to other people to the all the financial statements and so on. So yeah, let's talk about that if you're interested. Okay. So current activities. Oh, sorry. Was that somebody want to say something?
Hey, Matt, it's Fernando. I had a really quick question.
Hey.
So, and maybe, I don't know if you know this quite yet or not. By any chance, do you know what the operating expenses are going to be for 2021?
I do have a budget, so I don't have it in front of me right now, however. The monthly expenses are somewhere on the order of 300 Canadian.
Okay.
That might bump up a bit, though, after Transform, because we got a lot of new members this time last year. Yeah, and then there is a bit of a lump of expenses around Transform itself. So I'm not including that. I'm not taking the annual expenses and dividing it by 12. I'm talking about the recurring expenses there. I imagine it would even out. I mean, I think in the budget this year, we were slated to spend about what we made, which was projected to be roughly 15,000 Canadian. So that was the total budget, income and outgoing.
Okay.
So it's a very small budget. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to eat up all of that right away. So it's good.
I see.
Thank you.
No, we're actually in pretty good shape. I would say we are certainly break even right now, and we have money in the bank. So the assets at the end of the year was something like 13,500 Canadian. And I'd say we're in a sort of break even mode right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so current activities. I mentioned the Subsurface Rendezvous. Thank you very much to Steve for organizing those. They've been pretty regular, once or twice a month. They're really, really great. Essentially, they are a talk followed by a discussion. It's a sort of pattern. And they've been consistently really good with engaging and interesting discussion and sort of purposeful discussion. So I've been really enjoying those. They are also live streaming to YouTube, so you can go find them there. There's a playlist for them on the YouTube channel. The Amazon AWS, sorry, I just realized I lost my video. I'll turn that back on. Amazon AWS gave us an in-kind donation last year. I know it's sometimes a bit weird to talk about these kind of credits, basically digital credits on the AWS system as a donation. But anyway, they allocated us $25,000 worth of these credits. I'm sure you're aware that's a bit of a clearly there's a purpose to giving those credits out. It is quite easy to get sucked into AWS. It's a vast platform. And, I think we're trying to be responsible about how we use that money and try not to become dependent on AWS as an organization, and so on. The main goal has been actually to try to allocate them to our members' projects. So Filippo and Steve went out and solicited proposals from the membership to use those credits and indeed that is what chiefly they are being used for right now. I can hear someone.
I would say that, yeah, on that front, we did do sort of initial call projects. We got basically 2 people started on the platform on their projects for that. They're basically personal scale or small scale projects that aren't really going to eat into that allowance that we've got. I think the Jupyter Hub and some of Justin Gosse's ideas or his proposal around doing something more connected between Jupyter Hub, Data Underground, etc., is one project that is a bit larger and might establish something longer term there that we might want to keep running on AWS once that's in place. But beyond that, we are still on the lookout for projects. And I think maybe with our first call, it was that people and members didn't really realize how open this was to being used. Mm-hmm. And basically, we have the remainder of the year and a bit of next year, I think, where these credits are available. So I'd just like to ask everybody to really, if you want to use AWS for some aspect of your project, then the time is, there's credits there, and we can easily get these resources to you over the next few months. So please shout out and I guess encourage people to think about doing that. Particularly as well, I'm keen that if there is a way to do something more educational or somehow reach groups that aren't normally have access to those types of resources easily, then again, that would be a great way to help people to help use them well. And perhaps once the Jupyter Hub's set up, we could have people running their courses out of our Jupyter Hub, etc. There's lots of possibilities, but we'd still like to get some more momentum there, I guess, and get some more people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. Yeah, just to underscore, especially if there are opportunities to help people that wouldn't otherwise be able to, run their project or get access to that sort of support, that sort of compute, and so on. We are using, as an organization, those credits as well. So, for example, occasionally we've hosted some data sets on S3. This Jitsi server is running on the Software Underground's AWS, and as well as the YouTube streaming part of it. We do have some other services too, like Data Underground and the Subsurf Wiki, which could potentially move to AWS. So there's, it's potentially a really great resource for us as an organization. I'd say we're still figuring out how to really get the most out of it. Thanks to Steve and Filippo. Brian, was that a signal? No. Okay, sorry, I thought you were waving at me. Okay, another thing that we used some funds for was to help a couple of people pay for, actually I can't remember how many people it was in the end. I think it was up to 5, but I don't remember how many we actually supported.
3 people.
3, okay, thank you, Filippo. And that was for PyData, is that right?
That's correct. PyData Global Conference.
Right, so the PyData Global had what I thought was actually a really smart and sensible pricing scheme. It was a sort of pay what you want, but they had a very strong set of recommendations for people in different situations. And, we, as a sort of one nonprofit to another, if you like, were able to support these people kind of at the recommended rates for their situation. So we made a nice donation essentially to another organization that's really well aligned with ours. Although of course they have no idea who we are. But anyway, I thought that was a good use of funds. So there are lots of projects going on that aren't necessarily what you would call Software Underground projects per se, but they're very much functioning through the Software Underground and its members' activities and so on. You know, we haven't really started proper discussions about this yet, but I mean, for certain, at Transform 2019, one of the threads there was, you know, how can Software Underground build or at least foster the creation of a really solid subsurface open source stack for the community, you know, essentially enable and promote the building of really solid open source tools, and even to the extent of funding them in some way and flowing money to open source developers, perhaps offering things like scholarships, student projects, internships on projects like Subsurface, SegWiSAC, Welly, and so on. And you know, I think, like I say, we haven't started those conversations, but I would love to see that kind of NumFocus like support for community projects. Now, Transform 2022, you know, whether we keep doing a sort of annual virtual conference, or if people are totally fed up with virtual conferences at this point, then perhaps we pivot and come up with another container, another pattern for these meetings. So whatever that is, but we need something around, you know, our educational purpose for next year or for the future coming months. And of course, there will at least be an AGM roughly this time next year. So whatever's happening there, that will need to be we'll need to start having meetings and planning and those. There's also this computational field camp that I mentioned. We have money from Dell Technologies for that event. It got derailed a couple of times, actually. I can't actually even remember now quite what derailed it the first time. But then clearly COVID became a huge problem. So there's some documentation in the GitHub about this. There's a channel called Field Camp that you can go and catch up on that. But the basic idea was that it was to be a hackathon, but outside in the field with drones and handheld gamma ray instruments and whatever else we can lay our hands on. A sort of outdoor hackathon in a tent, something like that. So that I really hope will happen. Probably not this year, let's face it, but in 2022. So Dan Austin, Brian Burnham, and myself have been involved in that. I know there are plenty of people who are interested, but I think next year is going to be the year for it, finally. And then, you know, new things. Like I say, we want Software Underground to be a platform for its members. So let's figure out what needs to happen over the coming months and make it happen. We have money in the budget, people with passion, loads of skills. Like we can bring new stuff to this community. Okay.
Matt, did we have someone who wanted to add something there?
Oh, I don't know.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so just on the note of having the annual conference, the annual online conference or something else that could be done for the community. I like the idea of having this online conference because it can bring together everyone who's involved in Swung much more than any local conference could. But maybe incentivizing or helping organize and promote local meetups that could be, you know, organized by the people who want to meet up. So I don't know if there's anything that Swung could do as an organization to help set that up. So like if we want to run an annual UK meetup or something like that to avoid long distance international travel, that would be I think generally a good thing. And then if we want to see everyone, then we can always meet online.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. I think that with the field camp as well, there may be a way to do this sort of distributed but globally connected clusters of meetups where it's safe, where there's not some massive carbon cost to traveling, and actual dollar cost to traveling. And it's also, it gets more convenient, right? Because people can fit things more easily into their schedules. So yeah, I think that's going to be a theme once people are able to travel and move around and meet up in groups again. So yeah, I really hope we can figure something out like that. And just to to pick up on what you were saying about like finding venues and things, like absolutely, I think within Software Underground, not just me, but like Filippo and others who have been organizing real world events in the past, we have a little bit of experience there. We also have this amazing network of people who can potentially offer venues. And one of the reasons for incorporating Software Underground was to make it easier for a corporate to come along, sponsor an event, and for Software Underground to act as a funnel for money, rather than lots of individual little groups here and there going and asking for support for a local event. We can do things on a sort of different scale, hopefully. So yeah, that's absolutely, I love that. That would be such a great outcome, I think, to stay global, but also be local. I think that could be really fun. Thanks, Leo. Now, we are going to move on in a minute to the bylaw, which possibly sounds a bit dull, and indeed it is a sort of legal document that describes how Software Underground operates. What is a member? How do we call meetings? What's a quorum? What are the boards? How does the board make decisions? What are its responsibilities, and so on. But underpinning that, I just wanted to sort of mention at this point, underpinning that there are what are called our articles of incorporation. So there's a link in gray at the top of this page to our official page on Corporations Canada. We're our corporation, even though we're a non-profit. I find that a bit, the language is a bit funny, but it's basically the same sort of legal structures that are used for companies. We are not, by the way, a charity yet. And I sort of say yet because, we are involved in charitable activities. We have the same purposes as a charity would have, an educational charity. But you have to be a non-profit before you can be a charity. And it helps to establish a little bit of a basis before you make your application for charitable status. Why would we do that? Well, the only reason really is so that corporations that are registered to pay tax in Canada would be able to make tax-free donations to us at that point. So, that's advantageous for a lot of people. Certainly, Agile still makes donations every month to Software Underground. It'd be great for Agile to get the tax off of those donations, or to give more because it basically would stay the same, but we'd get the tax back, sort of thing. So, it's a thing that we need to do, is make that application, but we are not yet a charity. Our purposes, which are described in that blog post by Brendan that I've linked to there in pink, our purposes really define our activities. So our activities as a non-profit are supposed to be and have to be fully described by our purpose, and our purpose describes all of our activities. So you actually can't do things that are outside your purpose either. So it's kind of both the playing field and the fence, if you see what I mean. So those are defined in our articles. They are not set in stone. Nothing really is. You can change them, but changing your articles is a little bit more of a faff than changing something in your bylaws. The articles also define, baked into the constitution, essentially, of the organization, that there is only one class of member. So this is the thing that you're faced with when you set up a nonprofit: is how many classes of member do you want? Many organizations have like student members, associate members, et cetera, with different voting rights potentially. We decided to just do away with all of that and say you're either a member or you're not. It just felt simpler. It also defines how many board members we must have, and we must have between and including 5 to 11 directors on the board at any one time. Currently there are 10, and the quorum for our director meetings is 5. And then, there's this sort of overriding restriction that I've put on the page here, just to, hammer it home, I guess. But we can't operate legally for the financial or personal gain of any of our members. It has the energy and finances of the nonprofit can only be used towards its purposes. That's the sort of definition, I guess, of a nonprofit. So yeah, that blog post that I've linked to there is probably the best place to start if you're interested in that stuff. But like I say, all of these things are baked in to the very definition of or the establishment of our society. The bylaw builds on this. It is a document that you must have as part of your the definition of your society, but you have to adopt it. The members have to adopt it. So here's how the board is proposing that this will work. We took the so there's a link right there, softwareunderground.org/bylaw1. You can go and read it. I shared this a few weeks ago in Slack, and the board has been discussing it since last September. So we started with one of the standard pro forma bylaws on the Corporation Canada website. And we made some choices because sometimes there are essentially 2 versions of things. So for instance, in order to make decisions, it suggested choosing between voting on decisions or using a consensus-based decision process. So we decided to use a consensus-based decision process. And there are a few other choices like that in that document. We went back and forth on it from about September until we voted on adopting the current one that you see before you in January, in the January board meeting, which I've linked to at the top of this page. So what are the highlights? Because it's, like I say, rather a long document. I'm just going to turn my camera on again, so I just realized it turns off every time I stop sharing. So in there is the definition of what a member is, but also what rights a member of the organization has. Now, I guess, sorry, let me back up and just focus on what a member is for a second. Our discussion in the board started with the idea that we couldn't just make everybody in Slack a member of the organization. Nobody in the Slack signed up to be a member of the Software Underground as an organization, in other words, to agree to any of the terms that are set out in that bylaw. In fact, many of the members joined Slack before we even had a code of conduct, so they hadn't agreed to that. So there was this feeling that they just showed up in a public Slack, right? They hadn't said, I want to be a member of the Software Underground and have the rights and responsibilities of members in that organization. So we immediately rejected the idea that we could just say, okay, well, everyone here's a member. We then went back and forth a bit on like, okay, well, what then is a member? And what we settled on was a kind of minimal, because as a principle, we wanted it to be as accessible as possible. So it's free to join. So there is no dues collecting process or anything like that. We are also not a professional organization that certifies professionals or anything like that. So we don't check on, are you a geologist or a geophysicist or anything like this. And there was never any question that we weren't going to have a sort of pyramid scheme style approach where it's like, you must get the signatures of 3 existing members before you can join, because that's a classic way to basically impose bias, right, from the start. So we wanted to keep it open, keep it free, have a minimal agreement that, yeah, I'll abide by the code of conduct, and yeah, this is a thing that you could throw me out of if I misbehave, kind of thing, and I accept my rights and responsibilities. And so that's what we have. So you can go to, and many of you probably have, I think, go to softwareunderground.org/join and hit the join button and fill out a very small form. And after that, you're a member. Now, memberships need a way to then, we have to have an idea of who's a member now. We don't want to end up in 10 years with like all these members that no one's ever seen, because they joined years ago and then never showed up after that sort of thing, which is sort of what we've got in Slack, right? I mean, there's a lot of people joined probably years ago and haven't signed in for 2 years. So we will have to do the membership thing. We'll roll it around every year. Well, gosh, I can't actually remember if we decided. I think we decided to do that on the heartbeat of the AGM. So basically every year we'll do a membership drive and say, okay, who wants to be part of the voting caucus of the Software Underground now for this AGM? And then we'll repeat that on an annual basis and just expire everybody's membership at the same time. So that way we always have a current, open collection of the most committed and the members who want some hand in the future and the determination of what Software Underground does. And I think that's what we've ended up with, right? Is you. So anyway, so it's a bit like, it's a little bit modeled on open software communities where there's like a core team of whatever, core devs, maintainers, people who determine the future. But it should be extremely easy to join that team. You basically just have to put your hand up and say, I want to be part of that team. So that's what we've got. That's what we've striven to do. I'll just go quiet for a second. In a nutshell, your rights as a member include the right to vote on things like we're just about to do, the right to receive notice of meetings, to propose agenda items at member meetings, to requisition, which basically means ask for or order, if you like, a member meeting. These are all set out in that link that I shared there. To elect and dismiss directors, which we're going to do today, to approve the bylaw, which we're also going to do today, I hope, and also to approve future amendments to the bylaw. So the bylaw can be amended in future by a majority vote of members, and to access records and receive the financials of the organization. So those are your rights. And the responsibilities are to sort of align yourself with the purposes of the non-profit and to abide by the terms and conditions, which chiefly include the code of conduct. Those are on the website, and of course were linked in the things that you looked at after you hit join. Also in the bylaw is that the board members, the directors, will have 3-year terms, and that our decisions are made by consensus. Many of the things in the original bylaw were about like how you're going to post meetings. It would be like, you'll post meetings in the clubhouse on the notice board. And I'm like, yeah, well, clearly all of that language has to be updated to include electronic communications. So a lot of the tweaks we made to the document were in that vein. Most of the rest of the bylaw, if you read the paragraphs, they are couched not in terms of kind of rules, but more in terms of possibilities. So for example, when you look at the piece on having officers, it doesn't say you must have a president, a vice president, a treasurer, and a secretary. It's more like you can have elected officers. If you do, this is how it works. So we tried to leave all of that language basically alone because it all seemed very permissive and just describing possibilities and options, and basically not to try to close any doors at this point. If future boards decide that they would like to try changing that, or if future members decide they would like to change some of those things, that's totally possible. Everything in there can be, it's our document. It describes what we want. So that's, absolutely the purpose. All right. Well, with that, so yeah, just as a reminder, this is the mutable document that describes how we will make decisions and accept members and so on. The board has debated it. We adopted it to propose to you on the 28th of January. And we're now offering it up to vote. And I'm proposing that we adopt this bylaw as it currently stands. So the way the voting is going to work is new to us. I'm going to use this system called OpaVote. And what it's going to do is email you. So allow me to just double check that that's all in place and it looks good. So please go and check your email, the one that you signed up with, if you have multiple ones. I don't know which one that was. So I suppose you could ask me, but don't ask me right now. Well, no, I'd like it if this vote can happen now. Actually, let's aim to close this vote within the next, let's say, 10 minutes. We will move on and talk about the next vote while we wait. In the meantime, I will go quiet.
The email is going to be from the Software Underground, or?
I think it will be from OpaVote.
OpaVote.
I suppose I could go and check my own email. Oh, I suppose it might not be instantaneous.
Could anyone raise their hand if they have the email?
Yeah, I'd also like that. I've only used this once and I felt like it sent them immediately though.
I literally just got it, so I raised my hand, so it is coming through.
Yeah, I just got it as well.
Yes, me too.
So in case this system seems perverse, so this system was recommended as something that other open communities use. And I do like the way that they have clear record keeping. It's designed to be an official record sort of thing. So that's why it's sending you a personal key. you can only vote once, only you can vote, and so on. All right, so I'll leave that poll open until we've heard from a decent number of people, and I think I can see some real-time activity.
Yeah, I haven't received yet, but it might take a while.
Okay, well, we'll try to wait for a decent period of time after everyone's received.
Okay, then I feel better, Dieter, if you also have not. I just have this now. How do I know if I am a member?
If you signed up, I think you're the same. I think you're the same, Philip. But did I really sign up?
I'm wondering the same thing. I don't have it yet either.
If you go to softwareunderground.org/join, or actually just go to softwareunderground.org and then sign in at the top right. If you have because when you join, you basically create an account. So if you've joined, you'll see when you go to /join, it will say thank you for joining. If you see the join button, then either you haven't joined or you haven't signed in.
Since you brought that up, every time I go to Software Underground and sign in, it'll ask me if I want to join. I'm not sure if everybody's encountering that problem or not.
Yeah, I do see that. And then when you click through on that, the joining page is now different and telling me that I have joined and that I could cancel. But that's the join button appears to still be in the My Account menu, allowing you to click through.
Yeah.
But that's okay, I think.
It doesn't present you with another form to join, though. I think,
No.
I don't know quite why it even shows you that button.
I think I wasn't actually a voting member.
I don't think I'm able to.
I wasn't either, Brendan. Don't feel bad.
I think Dieter was like just campaigning to get people signed up at the last minute. Yeah, I don't see your name in there, Dieter.
It's okay.
Now we know
Professional
why.
gardeners have the worst gardens.
Good. Well, do feel free to sign up. Sorry.
Heard about this thing.
I thought if you stand, then you're automatically on. No, my bad.
I can get in and edit the web page, but
Yeah, and probably do all sorts of other things.
access the finances.
Matt, I signed up just a few minutes ago, but I think I haven't received an email. Am I on the mailing list or?
I only have the only people in the voting, I'm afraid, are people who signed up until about 1 minute before I started this meeting.
Okay, so I'm not expecting to get the email.
I'm afraid I don't think I can add you at this point.
No problem.
Can we do mail-in ballots, or are those not allowed anymore? Too soon?
You can do a mail-in ballot.
So I was signed up already because I was able to reset it.
Yeah, I've sort of devolved responsibility for seeing who's a member to the actual members. I'm sorry. I see now the folly of my ways. So we've all learned a lesson.
I can't find anything in my email, so I'm just gonna give up.
Okay, I mean, I have no. Actually, I suppose I can.
Do you have enough votes for the bylaw to either pass or not pass?
Right now, I can see that we've received 27 votes. Let me see. I suppose since we don't exactly have a roll call, there are how many people are in this room?
36, isn't there?
Well, I was going to ask how many.
Oh yeah, 36. Well, what it comes down to who's present at this meeting, not the total body of members. So certainly the majority of people in here have voted. So, but I will leave it open for a few more minutes and continue with the next piece here, which is the board election. So the profiles are over here on the website. I'll let you go and look at those. Okay, so as I sort of briefly mentioned earlier, when we incorporated, you have what's called a founding board, which David Holmes referred to that as a coalition of the willing sort of thing. So it was, really out of necessity, since we didn't exist yet. It was a group of people that I already knew, and in several cases were already basically involved in running things in the software underground. So, already maintainers on the GitHub and organizing events and so on. And that's how we started. But of course, there's always a danger there that you end up with, an echo chamber, a highly biased group of, handpicked individuals, etc. And I don't know, perhaps that's inevitable. But anyway, that's how you have to get started, essentially. And now the only mandate that founding board has is to get you to the first AGM. All right. So, basically bring the bylaw, bring a proposal for what's going to happen after the AGM. I have another board. And at that point, you can start once you've got through the sort of exceptional circumstance of the first AGM, then that board has a mandate, hopefully. And now you can start to sort of do business. Now, notwithstanding that we're all busy people and this is a totally voluntary thing and real life, etc., we get done kind of what we can. And of course, we'd love to do a million things. But it's all about small nudges in the sort of direction that we want to go. So practical respect for each other's time and attention and just the reality of trying to steer in the right direction overall. So that's that's where we're at, is coming to the membership today, asking for a mandate to continue doing that. And some of the first orders of business excuse me, will be to set up a nomination process for finding board members into the future, and deal with the other things that I mentioned earlier, like events and so on. But that piece about like figuring out how we're going to keep the board ticking over with new people and new ideas, but without and not burn people out and make them fed up with being on the board or dread board meetings. That's one of the things we need to do next. Okay, so the terms here have come from basically a desire to say, okay, well, look, me and Brendan, Filippo and Steve were sort of the board before there was a board. Like, we were part of the invisible power structure, basically, for the last little while. So I'm proposing that we step down from the board at the end of this year. That the other board members that we started the year with, or at least in the summer, added, so that's Dieter, Louisa, Lieka, Chance, and Joe, continue for 2 more years, because they've basically been serving for a year so far. And Olawale, who just joined, like, in fact, he visited a board meeting and is now ready to join. Of roughly 4-ish, 1/3, in other words, of the board. So 3 or 4 people, and keep some experience and get some new people. And of course, there's nothing in there about not being able to serve ever again. People can come back to the board after a break. People can, we hope they don't, but it's perfectly fine for people to leave the board, and then the board can seek to replace that person during the year. We don't have to wait for an AGM to do that. This is all set out in the bylaws. So it's completely practical. What we're looking for here is just a rotating group of enthusiasts that can include absolutely anybody. And the idea here is also not that the board does all the things, right? As we've mentioned a few times today, like, we all want Software Underground to be a platform for its members. So if somebody comes and says, look, I want to do this meeting, I want to run this field camp, I want to run that talk series or produce a book or a movie, we're down. We'll find resources, we'll find volunteers, we're into it. So it's not the only way to get things done or have a voice. All the board meetings are open to all members. Swung org channel, which is the board channel, is open to all members. It's really just so that we have a few people that we know we can kind of pick on and get things done. So that said, there's the proposal. It's in front of you. I'm going to send the other email now because I want there to be plenty of time for that to arrive. And we can then proceed with that vote. So what's in the proposal here is to approve this current board for the next 12 months up to the next AGM. So that is what you're voting for, and you should receive an email for that momentarily.
Hey, Matt, there's a question about incorporation in Canada. Does that mean that anyone on the board needs to be based there?
No. Okay, so I do think that one person on the board needs to be in Canada currently. But to be honest, we also want to be a global organization and to be practical. So if there wasn't a Canadian resident on a proposed board, I think we would just look at what's the minimal requirement to pass, whatever's needed to make that happen. But yeah, I think there does need to be at least one board member here currently. Does that answer your question? I know it's a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah, no, that seems entirely reasonable. I was just checking if that's, it's sensible as well that, you're incorporated in a country, you should have someone from that country to, be present on the board. So I was really just, it was just curiosity of if that is a potential limitation, and
Yeah, no, it's definitely, like, we did look at, so by the way, please look out for that other email. We did look at incorporation in the United States and in Switzerland. That was a debate that we had at the beginning. The path of least resistance turned out to be Canada. It was also cheaper. And yeah, I can't remember the details of that analysis, but I have it written down somewhere when we discussed it before the board even existed. It wasn't, and it still isn't totally clear to me how you become a truly international organization. I think it's probably by having lawyers who are prepared to file documents in various jurisdictions, which we don't have. So, yeah. That is a really good question from Louisa about Jitsi and its chat history. I kind of wish we could plug Slack into Jitsi so that the chat was just automatically a Slack channel or something. I haven't been paying attention to the Jitsi chat. I apologize. I see I'm the only one who hasn't. Okay, so Joe's saying, yeah, I haven't seen any language about there having to be a person here, but, you know, the registered office is my house. So don't quite know what that means. If there's ever a dawn raid because some future board commits some heinous crime, it's going to be a bit upsetting. Okay.
Can we like live stream that on YouTube?
Please, let's not plan that.
Oh boy. Transform 2022 is gonna.
Matt, I think if you got a private mailbox, I don't think people would consider that a abuse of funds.
Fair enough. No, but you actually have to have a physical location as a registered office. But yeah, the mailing. You're right. I don't think I have my home address on the website. Maybe. Do I do. Yeah. Okay. Great. But that's the registered address. So
does a PO box count?
No. It's only a mailing address.
There can't be that many houses in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I would love a visitor. Maybe not the armed forces, but I mean, if any Swung members want to visit, you're welcome.
I'm taking notes.
Taking notes.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah. No, I know. I just started a search for real estate.
You got a lot of people holding you to this, Matt. You better be careful. Ooh, I tell you what.
Well, it is a perfect Atlantic Canada day here today, so it would be a good day to visit. Okay, let's see how we're doing on these votes. I got 19 received on the board.
I also didn't receive the second one, by the way.
You haven't received the second one yet?
No, not even. I mean, not even the first.
I think it sounds like most of the board wasn't a voting member.
But I was registered on that. But maybe I was registered since a long time.
I don't think it was there that long, though.
I don't know.
I think that's the thing. It could have been logged in for a long time, because that's what Alessandro was asking. Oh, I've already got an account. Does that mean I'm automatically a member? But it notes this extra option on top of even if you've had an account for ages. You have to make it easier to not miss.
What, the join?
Next time. Yeah, or the fact that that you should go and look to join.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's see, where are we here?
I thought while you wait, I wanted to thank Filippo publicly that it works so fine with the Jitsi. I think it's awesome we have this open source platform for the first AGM.
I'm very surprised everything has been working so far with no hiccups.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It is. No, and Jitsi was, I think maybe it was even you, Dieter, that suggested Jitsi way back. So thank you for always reminding us that we should look for these open solutions. Okay, I am going to close voting on the first one. Don't really know. Well, it is what it is. I was going to say, I mean, I guess all those other members who aren't here right now also got those emails and may therefore not be able to vote when they try. Okay, very good. So I guess I'll actually just add this directly. So thanks for the votes on the bylaw. That was 29 for and none against. So that's a landslide. I'll just put that there for now, and I'll leave the other one open for a few more minutes. All right. Thank you, everyone, for voting. If you were able to. If we need to revisit how votes happen and we can find another solution that's secure and doesn't let all these non-members infiltrating the meetings and trying to vote slip under the door, then but absolutely, by all means, let's do that. Like I say, this open vote seems pretty reasonable. It's got a very small cost associated with it and seems to work. I don't have anything else to say, actually, so I will just wait a few more minutes before we close that other one. But other than to say thanks very much for the support this year and just in general in the Slack, and for coming to this meeting. That means a lot to know that there's a whole posse of people who are interested in and care about this this society, this whatever it is. I don't have any other business, so unless anyone's got anything they'd like to bring forward for a brief discussion, we've got 20 minutes or so left before we promise to release people, then we can do that. Or if you feel like you've got something that might take a little bit more discussion than we've got time for, by all means propose doing something in the chateau later, or just putting something on people's sort of list of things to think about, and we can revisit it at some time in the near future. So with that, I'll go quiet for a bit, and let me unshare my screen too. Oh, was I not sharing my screen? Maybe I wasn't.
You weren't.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, we've received 28 votes now on the other one. We had 29 before. So I was like, well, I'll just wait for this last person. But the last person is me. So I won't wait. I'll just do it. Okay. Okay, based on the thought that the same number of people will probably vote, I am going to... Does anyone not want me to close voting yet?
This calls for a recount. No, only joking.
Okay, recount requested.
No.
No, the process is underway.
Steve, what have you done?
No. Sorry, that was a flippant comment.
No, I was expecting this all along. Yeah, I can see a small gathering of people collecting outside my office already. Not again.
As long as it's not the SWAT team.
I did see a pine marten running around earlier, which I haven't seen before, so that was briefly exciting. But
what is that?
It's like a weasel kind of thing.
Oh.
Slightly cuter than a weasel.
Oh. Someone said Steve's got to recount the ones and zeros by hand on the chat. They got you, Steve.
Okay, well, okay, I've closed voting, and thank you for that. That you have approved the board unanimously. So thank you very much. I put that in the presentation thing there, so you can go and see it there. I will also publish the results, which I think will send it out by email. Boom. Probably a Canadian pine marten. Okay, yeah, could be. It's dark, quite dark with quite a bushy tail.
I gotta Google it.
I haven't got my binoculars out here. My eyesight's not good enough to give you a better description.
Matt might have brought her over from the UK. That's what Evan said.
Okay, wonderful. Well, there being no other business, I propose that we close this meeting a bit early, which is wonderful. Thanks for again, for the participation, for the time. It's not necessarily the end. I hope we can begin lots of new conversations about the new year ahead and so on. And hopefully it provoked some ideas about ways to use our time and attention and funds. Please get involved. Swung-org. Come to the next board meeting. There is going to be one, I think it'll be quite a short one, next Thursday at... It's in the calendar. It's in the Swung calendar on...
sometime UTC.
Which is a Gmail. Is it at 5 UTC, I think? Let me tell you. I'll tell you right now so that you have the information.
I think so.
4 p.m.
4 p.m. UTC. Right. Okay. So 5 BST, 6 in Europe. For me, it's 1. So for Houston, it's 11 a.m. And for Denver, it would be 10 a.m. So,
do you just have those memorized?
I'm getting used to it, I guess. Yeah. Please come along. There's always debate at them. We try to keep it pretty relevant and talk about the things that need talking about. They're pretty much always 90, maybe 92 minutes. You don't have to come to the whole thing. You don't have to say anything. You can just lurk. We'll be doing them right here in Jitsi. I actually don't know. Usually what happens is we post the link at the last minute in swung-org. So check there at the appointed time on Thursday to find out where the meeting's going to be. It'll be either here or in Gather.
The only inconsistency with the meeting was the board meeting was the location between Zoom and Gather and other platforms we tested.
It all got a bit confusing at one point, especially as I had technology automatically making remote meetings for me. It all got a bit much. But anyway, we've settled down to 2 now in Jitsi and Gather. So anyway, I hope we see you there. In the meantime, please take care. Please enjoy the rest of Transform, and we'll see you in the castle or in Slack. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Matt.
Ciao.
Matt.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks again.
Cheers.
A file note. Did you copy the questions, right?
Somebody did a little while ago.
Yash, it was just only up till Joe's thing. I can drop the rest in. I don't think there's really much of substance.
Yeah, that's great though.
Yeah, I'll copy it in. I'll just put it into the same. I'll just put it into the same thread.
Yeah, it's actually something interesting to ask Filippo if there is somewhere a log on the server of the chats.